Good evening and happy holidays to one and all. What a grand beginning to our 2025 holiday offering, Making Holiday Memories with the Capital City Brass Band. This is the award-winning Capital City Brass Band under the musical direction of Dr. Stephen Kandau. My name is Earl Pileski, and I have the best seat in the house right here, I can tell you. It's this evening I have the pleasure of being the holiday voice of this wonderful ensemble. Once again, we have the pleasure of hanging our stockings here at Bethel Church in Jackson. The ensemble wishes to thank Pastor Jordan Napier and the entire Bethel family who always make this stop a genuine highlight of our performance calendar. We love performing for you during this grand season of the year. The ensemble opened our evening with a joyous and brassy fanfare by Paul Levitt Cooper entitled Christians Awake. Written for the Christmas wedding of friends in 2007, Levitt Cooper chose the Advent hymn Christians Awake by John Byrom as a fitting texture to welcome Christmas in all its glory. We've just begun, so strap into your sleigh as we bolt and bound into the festive season before us. Speaking of sleighs, our next offering finds us squarely behind the quick trot of a traditional three-horse Russian sleigh known as a troika. Sleigh bells jingle in this work of the 20th century Russian Sergei Prokofiev, employing an old hussar tune over the pulsing tumble of galloping hooves. One can almost feel the brisk wind as this movement from Prokofiev's Lieutenant Kijé Suite grants to us a victorious and vigorous romp through snowy woods. Here's the Capital City Brass Band with Sergei Prokofiev's Troika. Christmas memories can be made anywhere. From Russian woodlands to the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. And one cannot hear the early strains of our next piece without thinking of the Christmas chaos brought to the big screen by Kevin McAllister and his bumbling family. You remember this story? Kevin is left behind when his family heads to France for an international holiday, not realizing Kevin isn't among them. The musical score for the first two films of the Home Alone franchise, now 6 films, was composed by the master of the music of the big screen, John Williams. No one does Christmas quite like John Williams, and his lilting theme from the 1990 film recalls Christmas traditions like riding down the stairs on the toboggan, splashing on just the right aftershave, and protecting the home front from the onslaught of the inept wet bandits. Christmas fun has arrived with the always recognizable theme from Home Alone. Just a couple of Christmases back, this fine ensemble brought to you what could only be described as a dimming of the bright lights of Christmas, with David Lavrine's Minor Alterations, Christmas Through the Looking Glass. It was his fun and rather tilted look at our most beloved carols of the season with a distinctly cloudy presentation. Well, once is never enough, and so this year the Capital City Brass Band brings Lavrine's sequel entitled Minor Alterations No. 2, Carols from the Dark Side. The season will never be quite the same as you collide with and slide under the surface of more than a dozen familiar carols, jumbled with classics such as Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, or even Frosty the Snowman over distinctly Hebraic dance rhythms. Oy vey! Even the composer rates the sequel as 31% more twisted than his first collection. No doubt you'll be entertained. And remember, there is light at the end of the Christmas Carol tunnel. This is just plain fun, so steady yourselves for our next effort with David Lavrine's Minor Alterations No. 2, Carols from the Dark Side. At least 31% more twisted. The Capital City Brass Band is an all-volunteer ensemble made up of some of the finest brass and percussion performers in southern Michigan. Over its 25-year-plus history, the band has provided the highest level of performance in concerts and competitions. The ensemble also provides free instructional clinics for middle and high school students. Music, equipment, and competition fees bring necessary costs to the organization. We operate as a 501c3 not-for-profit, and we greatly appreciate donations that come to the band from our audiences. You can visit our website at www.ccbrassband.com and find a secure link for donations. We also have a merchandise table that you can visit during the intermission following our first half. Why not help merry and bright arrive with a unique Capital City Brass Band gift or stocking stuffer? There's an idea. We're grateful for your attendance this evening and your consideration in partnering with us. Mr. Stephen Bula is a name that has been linked to the brass band movement for decades. An accomplished composer, arranger, conductor, and clinician, John Williams refers to Mr. Bula as one of the most accomplished musicians of his generation. His works find a home with choral ensembles, wind bands, and brass groups of various instrumentation. He also served the President's own United States Marine Band with distinction as its chief arranger for many years. Christmas music is also tied closely to the pen of Stephen Bula. And the Capital City Brass Band closes its first half this evening with Bula's lovely fantasia on Joy to the World entitled Christmas Encounters. At the conclusion, there will be a 15-minute intermission. Please drop by our merch table and say hello. Bringing our first half this evening to its conclusion here is Stephen Bula's Christmas Encounters. our second half opened this evening, we heard something unique. One simply cannot have a band concert without a march. The ensemble performed March, Christmas Rejoicing. The unique nature of this evening's march is found in the fact that it did not just come from one composer, but was written by the entire membership of the New York staff band of the Salvation Army. The various staff bands in the world's major cities house some of the world's finest brass artists, bar none. And this march was born from the expertise and musical experience of men and women who have performed Christmas carols perhaps more than any other musicians on the planet. In just about 3 minutes, the march put on display quotations from Angels from the Realms of Glory, Good King Wenceslas, I Wonder as I Wander, as well as many others. And it all fits into a finely crafted march that adds much to the Christmas band literature and our own celebration as well. Next on our program is a solo feature, and we have a wonderful performer to share with you this evening. Oliver Barron is a native of Ann Arbor who has been with the Capital City Brass Band since 2018 and has been holding the principal cornet chair since 2019. I don't know where this guy has the time to even study music. He holds bachelor's degrees from the University of Michigan in mechanical engineering, music education, and trumpet performance. He also holds master's degrees in trumpet performance and chamber music. Oliver comments, I enjoy playing with the band because of the high quality of musicianship, the great community, and getting to play with my brother Pelham and my father Richard, who also play in the cornet section. I'm very excited to be playing Huron Carol. It is really such a lovely piece. As noted, our next selection is the haunting Huron Carol, Canada's oldest Christmas hymn. It was composed by a Jesuit missionary by the name of Jean de Brébeuf, circa 1642. The original title was "'Twas in the Moon of Wintertime," but in the language of the Huron-Wendat people with whom de Brébeuf lived, the title given was Jesus, He is Born. Native concepts fill the nativity narrative where the Magi and shepherds are replaced by chiefs, and the baby Jesus is born in a lodge of broken bark. The carol has found its way into the hymnals of many denominations and is regularly sung in the Advent and Christmas services of its native Canada. Please welcome Oliver Barron and the Capital City Brass Band with their rendition of Huron Carol. sacred music includes influences from so many sources. Music from Europe, Africa, the Caribbean, and the Central and South American cultures have found their way into and have been formative in many American strains. Most notably our sacred music, our rock music, and jazz. And jazz has found its way into the Christmas seasonal genre, where red-nosed reindeer, talking snowmen, and a mostly bald little boy named Charlie Brown and his dog have delivered toe-tapping hip tunes that swing. Tonight, the Capital City Brass Band brings to you the composition talent of William Himes, longtime commander of the Chicago Staff Band of the Salvation Army. Himes' take on the farandole of Georges Bizet, which cites heavily from a French carol entitled The March of the Kings, gives us time to breathe in the celebration from a more modern vantage point. Perhaps the camels that gave transport to those famous three kings had a bit of dip and swing in their stride as they followed the star to Bethlehem. We can join in tonight, and we do that as the Capital City Brass Band brings a bit of cool to Christmas. So here now is William Himes' Three Kings Swing. fun. One of the performing ensembles most associated with Christmas holidays is the Boston Pops. Under the grand baton of Arthur Fiedler, the Boston Pops performed and recorded Christmas music for the world over several decades. In 1950, Fiedler approached his good friend Leroy Anderson of Sleigh Ride fame and asked for a Christmas composition. Anderson responded with a work including 9 well-loved carols of the season that he formed into a Christmas overture of sorts. In 1952, the carol, The First Noel, was dropped to shorten the piece for recording purposes. It is that version that is performed today by bands and orchestras the world over. The Capital City Brass Band wishes to thank again Pastor Jordan Napier and the Bethel congregation, and we want to add our special thanks to Lepley Music for their kind donation to this concert. We also thank all of you for attending tonight's concert and allowing us to be a part of your holiday celebration. May the light and joy of this season fill your heart. And we do hope some of the music you've heard this evening will add a special flair to the days ahead. With our final performance of the evening, the Capital City Brass Band brings you Leroy Anderson's A Christmas Festival.
Thank you.